You know, I've heard it said that imitation is the highest form of flattery. And if that's the case, then Bill Finnegan, the maker of the Klon Centaur, has got to be one of the most flattered people in the guitar industry, and especially in the guitar pedal industry. The original Klon Centaur now commands $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 and has been imitated up into the nth degree, most recently by Behringer. Obviously, it kind of looks like a cartoon version, and now they've changed the name. But people have gotten really, really close, both in circuitry and in look, of the famed Klon Centaur. Now, what's interesting is Klon still manufactures pedals. This is the unit known as the KTR. These are still available new. You can buy these if you can find it at retail. I think they're around $300, but most of the time on the secondary market, these are going for $500, $600, $700, $800. And for most people, we can't afford a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 Klon, and something like this that's still going to go for $500, $600, $700 or so is a lot of money just to put into an overdrive pedal. So, are there better alternatives? Well, I've played a ton of Klons over the years. I've owned a ton of different variations, a ton of different circuits. I have played some real ones, and now I obviously own a KTR as well. And in today's video, I'm going to see, is the KTR still the best Klon? Does Klon make the best Klon? Or have the imitators surpassed the master? One of my favorites is the Origin Effects Halcyon Gold. This does the Klon thing in spades, but as you can see, it's also got some extra switches and an extra knob and has some cool tricks up its sleeve. And we also have, most recently, the Keeley Manus. Now, Robert Keeley has been making pedals for about as long as Bill Finnegan, by my estimation, and he's done some really, really cool stuff with the Manus. It also does the Klon thing in spades and has some cool tricks up its sleeve. So today, we're going to see, have the imitators surpassed the thing that they sought to imitate? Let's find out. So let's quickly talk about kind of the specs and features of each pedal. This is the KTR again, and it's pretty straightforward. It's the most straightforward of the set here. You've just got 3 knobs, and if you're looking at the front of it like this, it's gain, tone, and output. So you've basically got gain and tone and your volume control for all intents and purposes. I mean, the only other thing that this has is a switch. Like most things on the KTR, it is quirkily labeled here. Let's see if it'll show up. There we go. And basically the one that says almost always better, if it's switched that way, that is buffered bypass, but you also have the true bypass options. Again, kind of the buffer is part of the signal path in the original Klon, giving it some of its unique sound. But if you do have, I think, wah and fuzzes and things like that that don't play nicely with buffers, you have the option of making this true bypass. Now, we also have the Halcyon Gold, which is the one that I have had for the most amount of time. I got this pedal last year, and I really, really love it. So what you have here basically is gain, tone, and level again. But you also have a dry blend control. Now, the original Klon circuit has kind of a preset amount of dry blend. On this pedal, it's at about the 1 o'clock mark, is supposed to be about what the original Klon has, so that's how I'm going to use it. But you also have 2 switches on the front. So in those 2 switches, you have the adapt circuitry, that top switch, which basically allows you to roll off the volume on your guitar and still retain top end, and it's kind of got 2 basic levels for that. And then you've also got a voice switch. So you've got Klon and mod, and the mod switch kind of flattens out some of that Klon mid hump. So I find that to be really helpful when swapping guitars. Sometimes the Klon mid hump is perfect for a certain guitar into a certain amp, but if I'm playing live and I switch to something, say from single coils to humbuckers or something like that, then that mid hump can be a lot at times, and sometimes it works perfectly, and sometimes you want to flatten it out a little bit. So I find that voicing switch to be really, really helpful. This is also only 9 volts, just like the original Klon. And then we have the Keeley Manus. Now, the Keeley Manus has some similar tweaks, I would say, to the Halcyon Gold. Notably, this was modeled after Josh Scott of JHS Pedals' original Klon. They had an oscilloscope and all of this kind of testing equipment that I don't really know anything about because I'm not an electronics engineer, and they got it just painstakingly close. There's a video up on that if you want to see just just how close. It's really, really incredible. And one thing I really like about this pedal, so it's got two switches. So you've got the bass switch, and you've also got a diode or transistor switch. So the bass switch adds a few decibels of low end to kind of help flatten out that EQ, which I find really helpful, again, depending on the guitar and amp, or even if you're just playing at home and the original Klon doesn't have quite enough bass bump in low volumes, that just makes it feel a little bit better. But most interestingly is the transistor or diode switch here. So in the transistor switch up, it is a germanium transistor. It adds some compression, adds some gain, and kind of cuts the volume a little bit, but that's really just because of the nature of what it is, because those diodes are wide open sounding. So you get the original Klon thing. You also get more gain on tap, and as you'll hear, this has the most gain on tap of any of them. And this one can be run at 9 or 18 volts. I'm going to be running at 18 volts in this demo so you can really hear the headroom. I do think this has the most kind of dynamic range of any of the pedals, but I wouldn't say the dynamic range on the other two is something that I have found particularly limiting. But it is really fun to play them side by side and hear what they sound like. So without further ado, I'm going to hook all these up on the pedal board. I'm using the Fender Player 2 modified Telecaster. This has noiseless pickups, and as of now is all stock how it came to me. It does have 6 saddles, aluminum saddles, so it doesn't have the brass tele saddle thing. Just worth noting if you're really, really in the weeds on this stuff. Maple neck, pretty straightforward Telecaster, and I'm going to be going into the pedal board. Again, I'm not going to stack in these pedals or anything like that. It's a mono pedal board. I'm powering it with a mono power supply because it allows me to run the Manus at 18 volts and the other two at 9 volts. So that's the power and all of that, and I'm just going to be going straight into my Sir Badger 18, a Bad Cat 112 cab, and it's mic'd up with an Earthworks SR20 microphone. So without further ado, now we can hear what it sounds like. So I intentionally waited to keep pricing information till the end because we often go into something with kind of preconceived notions in our head based on look or price, etc. All of that to say, we've already talked about what a KTR will run you. If you can find it at retail, it's under $300, which would actually put it in the middle of the pack cost-wise. The Origin Effects Halcyon Gold, brand new as of the time of recording this video, is $335. So also, not a cheap overdrive pedal, but I would say this is the most robust feeling. It's the heaviest. Origin makes really, really solid stuff. And while that doesn't mean that either of the other ones are less of a quality build, Origin just likes to make heavy metal pedals, so keep that in mind. The Manus, on the other hand, is the least expensive in the video by a pretty significant margin. These are $199. Again, really solid. It's bent aluminum enclosure. It's kind of this new format for Keeley that I personally really, really like. So those are the prices. The Manus being the least expensive, the Halcyon Gold technically being the most expensive at retail price, but still significantly less than what a used KTR will run you on the secondary market. So just a little bit of pricing information as you look into making your decision on one of these pedals. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be really, really interested to listen back to hear just how close these pedals get to each other. It is worth noting that the mid-range on each, especially in the more cranked ranges, is a little bit different, which I find really interesting. Now keep in mind that not all Klons sound exactly the same. Likely the one that Origin Effects had that they were comparing their Halcyon Gold to, and the one that Robert Keeley borrowed from Josh Scott, were a little bit different. You have part tolerance ranges and all kinds of things like that that make small differences. But all of that said, which of these was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking and leaving a comment. Just tell me something you liked about it. Which one of these is your favorite? And do you want to see more shootout videos like this? If you have a favorite Klon style pedal that I didn't mention in this video, what is it? I will say a couple of notable mentions. I really like the J-Rocket Archer. I've had a couple of different variations of that, and that one's definitely worth checking out as well if you just want a straight ahead Klon style circuit with none of the extra added features of things like the Manus and the Halcyon Gold. But that's all for this video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.